Welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends normally spin a wheel once a week, and it normally chooses the horror film for them. But today, we're doing a special episode. We're doing The Boogeyman from 2023, and that was directed by Rob Savage. And we're doing this one, today's date is April 16th, so we're recording this months before this comes out, but there's a reason for that, and we're going to get into that shortly. But I'm your co-host, Alec, and with me, you know him, you love him, Joe Testa.
I love these intros. Thank you very much, Alec.
I know, I got to start thinking of some new ones. I know, I just feel like it's getting a little repetitive.
Nope, I love it.
All right, good. Yeah, so this movie, we saw this like 4 days ago, and it was based on a Stephen King book, and why don't you explain, how you got the tickets, that whole process, because this was not just a regular movie-going experience for us.
Sure, yeah. So I've kind of had my eye on this movie a bit because, like you said, it is based on a Stephen King story. I actually just recently read his collection of short stories, Night Shift, which I thought was fantastic. And The Boogeyman happened to be one of my favorite stories from that book. So I wouldn't say I was looking forward to this movie, but it was on my radar, I'll say.
Right.
So I just happened to see a little advertisement on Instagram. They were looking for people to come see this movie, an early screening for free, and you would sign an NDA. You couldn't talk about it, and you were going to be recorded. And it's for like one of those commercials where you see the audience and you see their reactions, you see them jumping out of their seats, and I would assume you would see maybe some post-movie interviews too, because we knew that was going on. We didn't stay for that,
Right.
but yeah, that was the situation. We got free popcorn, and we saw this movie.
Dude, yeah, 2 free popcorns for me. I went crazy. I went out and there's 3 on the table still, and I was like, "Can I have one of those?" And the woman was like, "I guess," and then gave it to me. So yeah, 2 free popcorns and a Coke. Loved it. That was super cool.
Yeah, we hit them up good. I mean, between the two of us, we ate 3 large popcorns and 2 large sodas. I mean, we hit them where it hurts.
I know. Seriously, we saved a lot of money. Free tickets, too. So it was all around a good experience. I want to ask you, though, Rich, before we kind of get into this, can you think of any films from, the past 20-ish or more years where they've used this kind of marketing tactic before, where they've shown, the audience reaction, stuff like that? Are there any that stick out in your mind? There's a few to do in mine.
I feel like I've seen it 100 times, but would probably be hard-pressed to tell you any. I feel like this isn't a tactic used by, dare I say, really good movies. It seems kind of like a desperate thing, but I do believe Paranormal Activity did this, didn't they?
Yep.
Okay.
That was one of the ones I was thinking of. And then also Blair Witch Project did it. So it's like those kind of viral movies where they're like, oh, we got to spread the word and show that this is people are passing out in the theaters and pissing their pants and crazy stuff's happening.
It's funny you mentioned something as old as the Blair Witch Project, because I will say, when I watched the trailer of this movie, and I'll just kind of spoil some of my thoughts now, even after I watched this movie, I feel like it is a throwback to movies we got in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I felt like there was a whole wave of these kind of watered down PG-13 rated horror movies with these kind of generic horror titles. We talked about Darkness Falls. There was Wes Craven Presents They. I actually saw that in theaters. There was even a 2005 movie called The Boogeyman. I don't know if you remember that movie. I actually didn't see it. But yeah, I feel like there were a lot of these types of movies, and watching this, I just felt like it transported back in time.
Yeah, I know. We talked about this a little bit after we saw it, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, it was just so generic, paint by numbers horror movie that just didn't feel like it had any soul to it. And whenever a movie has Stephen King, written by or inspired by one of his novels or novellas, I'm always like, okay, I want to see this. I'm interested in it. I didn't know anything about this movie until you told me about it, so I went in totally blind. And when we left, it was just kind of this, I'm trying to think of another one, Skeleton Key. That was one from the early 2000s that kind of reminded me of this. Just very generic bad guy. doesn't really matter in the end. Nothing really matters. You've seen this movie 100 times before. That's what it felt like. Even the poster, like, it reminds me of the Babadook, but they're like, just make it, like, shitty. And that's kind of the, I don't know, the poster's bland, everything about it. And what's even the title? Like, what does the title even mean? Because the monster, it's a monster. It's not even a man.
Yeah. And I don't mean to, like, take shots at PG-13 rated horror movies because, you know what? There's a bunch of good ones. Like, I love Drag Me to Hell. I feel like that girl's face in the opening scene of The Ring still haunts me.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are really good ones out there, but this one just falls in with some, you know, kind of infamous company from the early 2000s.
Yeah, this movie came out in 2005 and nobody would have, you wouldn't have known the difference. I mean, the CGI is not anything to be like, whoa, you know, there wasn't a big twist at the end that you're like, okay, I get it. There's nothing that this movie's it's just gonna come and go. Like,
yeah. And that's why I kind of insisted on doing this podcast now as opposed to when it comes out, because I feel like when it comes out, I'm already going to have forgotten all the details of this movie. It might be a struggle today.
I was just going to say the same thing. I'm like, I don't remember a lot. I mean, I'm reading it on Wikipedia as I'm going through it. One thing I just want to mention too, this apparently was supposed to go on Hulu. It was supposed to go straight to Hulu. And then for some reason, somebody was like, you know what? This is a theater kind of release. I don't know why.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, this feels like something, yeah, it would pop up on your streaming service. But I think horror is so hot right now that they probably decided to take a risk. I think Evil Dead Rise, which as of this recording comes out next week, was going to do the same thing. That was going to be a direct-to-streaming release, but there's so many of these horror movies are really hitting it big, like The Barbarian and a bunch of others that, hey, why not?
Yeah, maybe I don't think this is going to do well. I really don't. I mean,
No.
The only way this could have done well is if it came out in the 2000s. Like, you know, I worked at the movie theater then. This would have been a perfect, like, Friday night date for, like, some high school kids or whatever. But they don't do that really anymore, I feel like. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
I just want to mention something about Stephen King, too. I feel like, well, I'm a sucker for anything with his name on it.
Right.
And I feel like we were kind of going through a Stephen King renaissance in like 2017, around when It Chapter 1 came out.
Yeah.
I feel like there were a few, like 11/22/63 was on Hulu. I was a huge fan of that. Thought Gerald's Game was good. 1922 is kind of an underseen Netflix movie with his name on it. That was good. And so it seemed like, you know, we were really on the cusp of this renaissance, and then it kind of went downhill really quick.
Yeah.
It seemed like, you know, I wasn't a big fan of It Chapter 2 or the Pet Sematary remake, and we just had Firestarter.
Yeah, that was so bad.
And also, I don't even know if you know this, but there was a brand new Children of the Corn movie that just came out like a month ago.
Is it a remake or is it a sequel?
Yeah, I think it's a remake, and it kind of came and went without anyone noticing. And then, yeah, Salem's Lot, we talked about that, was supposed to come out this month. It's been, you know, delayed so many times. So it's, it's not a great time to be a Stephen King fan.
No, it's weird. Yeah, it was such a heyday in the 70s and 80s and, you know, even into the 90s. But I don't know. I mean, we talked about it too. We're like, well, they should just start remaking or just making movies they've never made before, and that's this. They never made this one before, and you're like, okay, I see why they're like scraping the bottom of the barrel now.
Yeah, and again, this is a kind of loose adaptation of his work. I mean, the short story is just that. It's very short, so if you're going to turn it into a movie, you really have to kind of do your own thing. And I mean, there is a good movie in there somewhere in the premise, like there, you know, a monster that lives in the closet and kills kids. I mean, someone could take that and turn it into either something scary or a fun B movie. And I think this movie is neither of those things.
I mean, from what I can remember, I feel like it just takes itself very seriously, but then there's like comedic moments when there shouldn't be. Like immediately after the horror, there were comedic moments. And I just remember it was like, I don't know, it just felt like, okay, let's break the tension immediately. And I don't know. What is the plot even? Like, it's so like, there's a family, there's a husband, a husband, a wife, two daughters. The wife dies in a car crash, right?
I know she's dead.
Yeah. Okay. So she dies, and then like the family's moving on or whatever. The older daughter's kind of like going through her teenage angst stuff, and the youngest daughter's like, very typical horror movie kid is like, I see things and there's monsters and wherever. So yeah, then a guy comes to their house because he read about the wife getting killed in a car crash, and then he's like, hey, my entire family's dead, right?
Yeah, and the dad is a therapist. That's why this stranger arrives. He's there to talk to somebody about this tragedy that happened to his family.
Okay, and then that guy just kills himself in their closet, and then that sparks off everything.
Yeah.
Uh,
And, I thought we would at least be in for a good jump scare movie, because that's why we were there. That's why there were cameras all over the theater. I thought we would at least get that. But most of this movie is just kind of people wandering around dark hallways, and occasionally it will lead to the briefest of jump scares, and sometimes it leads to nothing. Like, I remember you got up to get more popcorn at one point, and the lead girl was walking down to the basement, and I was like, oh no, hopefully he's not going to miss something good. And no, don't worry, you missed absolutely nothing, not even a jump scare.
That's the thing. I was gonna ask you, like, a lot of times you gotta be like, hey, did I miss anything? And I didn't think I did. That's why I didn't even bother asking. So the husband, after the guy kills himself in their house, he just basically continues living his life, but he's never really addressed the wife getting, passing. So he's never talked about it with his daughters, never talked about it with a therapist or anything like that. And this girl's getting bullied. The oldest girl's getting bullied by, like, for the weirdest reasons. Like, your mom's dead, ha ha ha. Like, that's kind of like the tone of it. That one blonde girl, I just remember, like, I'm like, who wrote this? Like, this is like the fakest bully. She's so mean to her.
Listen, bullying it's a strange thing in movies. I feel like very few movies capture bullying very well. It's usually just something really over the top, or I think this movie falls into that. I think this is just ridiculous. And nothing about these interactions feel real.
No, it's like, your mom's dead, haha, you're wearing like her clothes, like, let's throw food on her. It was just like, come on, this is, especially nowadays where it feels like everybody's so like, hey man, like, don't be mean to people, like, don't discriminate against people, like, let people be themselves.
Right.
That doesn't happen.
Right. Whether that's genuine or not, like, this girl would probably be, really sweet to her face, and then she would have a fake Twitter account where she would post her bully shit, something like that.
Right.
That feels more today. Like, what she does in the movie is just, I just can't imagine it under any circumstances.
Dude, so like, I genuinely don't even remember like what happens then. So after the guy kills himself, I know freaky shit starts happening in the house, but like, what is it? I don't remember what happens. There's no priest that comes or anything like that.
Yeah, and I'm very unclear what the rules are of this monster, and I don't love even the look of the creature. It's kind of a CGI Cloverfield monster.
Yeah.
I don't understand what he does, what his mission is, what his weaknesses are. And he appears so seldomly in the movie.
Yeah, we get a couple of jump scares, a couple quick, like, like his arm goes, through a door, and you're like, oh, I think I saw something. But yeah, the ending's the only time we get anything, and by that point, you're just like, Jesus, I don't fucking care. I don't even care.
Yeah.
But what did happen though, Joe? Like, I don't remember the plot of the movie. What happens after the guy kills himself?
Like I said, it's a lot of just kind of people walking around hallways.
Yeah.
That's really all I remember. I mean, the monster has powers, apparently, that it could imitate people's voices, right?
Sure.
And
yeah.
I don't think that is ever really used in any meaningful way or explored in any memorable scenes. Like, once you get like a half hour into a movie, 40 minutes into a movie, an hour into a movie, and it hasn't really gotten you, you really realize, oh, it's not going to. Like, if they had anything, they would have used it by now. It's like, this movie is losing me, and quick. And eventually it's just going to be too little too late. But I'd be hard pressed to even tell you like a good jolt. Maybe there's a moment where it like breaks through a door, and then I think it's a dream. So it's like not even a second. Like, it's over while you're still jumping out of your seat, and you're barely jumping out of your seat.
Yeah, the only thing I can remember that about the voice mimicking thing that I was like, okay, I guess, is right at the end when like the therapist calls the girl back into the room, or she thinks she hears it, and she goes back in. I was like, but where's the monster? Because then she goes to the closet and he's like, can I help you? And she just shuts it like, nope, I don't need your help, and then walks away. So he's like, wait, was the monster there? Because she heard that.
I feel like there were moments that had potential. Like they're in like a therapist's office and they're doing this. I guess it's to help the kid who's afraid of the dark. They're shining this light, and then the light goes off. It's like immersion therapy or something,
Right.
you know? And I was like, okay, you have something here. Now, come on. I'm rooting for this movie at this point. I mean, we're all on camera. I want to be in the commercial. I want to jump and have my popcorn fly out of my hand. And, but, I really don't think that even that scene amounts to much of anything.
Yeah, that was like where it was red and it kept like turning on and shutting off and turning on. Yeah, I feel like I laughed when they showed like the therapist's face because it was like, yes, honey. And she like goes up and smiles this weird smile. And I was like chuckling.
Probably the creepiest moment. And I don't even think that was supposed to be creepy. Like, I think that probably just happened by accident.
I think you're right. Exactly. That's why I was smiling because I was just like, oh, she's not supposed to be scary right now. Yeah. Ooh. So yes, you're right. There were moments where this could have been good, but man, I'll say, I don't know. Have you seen Terrifier?
I saw the first one, yeah.
Okay, so the first one, I mean, either one of them, there's a kill in that is so brutal that it sticks with me, years after I've seen it. We saw this movie 4 days ago. I barely can tell you anything. I mean,
yeah.
Does anybody die? I don't think so.
I mean, besides the guy who hangs himself.
Right.
And then there's the crazy lady who tries to trap the thing. She must die, right?
Oh, right. Okay, so, right. So the guy who hangs himself's wife still lives at their house and has like 10 trillion candles because we don't know. They never tell us if the thing is like afraid of candles or light or whatever. It doesn't tell us.
I think they established that.
Did they?
It can't come into the light. It's actually the same thing as in Darkness Falls.
God damn it. Okay, so, I mean, there's probably better things than candles because your house could light on fire. Right. I mean, could you get like a floodlight or something? Or I don't know. So anyways, so she's got a shotgun. She's hanging out there. Her kids are all killed by her husband. Her husband killed herself. And now I guess this monster latches on to other tragedy, like every other horror movie. It's like, oh, a family that's going through hardship. I guess I'll get in there. Feeds off their suffering, fear, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, I'll take your word for that. I didn't get that from the movie. I wish I did.
Uh-oh. Maybe I'm filling in the blanks. I don't even know.
Yeah, no, that sounds about right. Yeah, I'll take that.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Terrifier, and it's like, it doesn't even need to be something brutal or super gory. I mean, you think about like Poltergeist when the clown doll is like hiding in the room. I mean, that scene is terrifying, and there's no blood or anything like that. And I wish we could have just got something like this, even like peripheral horror, just like if you saw I mean, I know there's little moments where you see the creature in the corner of your eye, but I don't think this director made the most of those moments,
No, I don't know, man. This basically to me just feels like they found a director. They're like, yeah, we can basically just tell him what we want, and then he'll just do it. I mean, I'm looking. He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, so it might have been his first film, but it just felt very, very generic.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, how does this movie get made? It's like, it's like it doesn't feel like a studio interference movie, because I would think just a studio wouldn't want something this dull. Like when you think about a lot of the really successful horror movies like The Conjuring, like there's so much going on in those movies. Those movies are actually a little over the top for my taste.
Right.
Like, so I would imagine they would find this movie really dull. But then again, at some point towards the end, it almost feels like a different movie. Those could have been studio notes. So I don't know. And at the same time, it doesn't feel like somebody's passion project.
Yeah.
So this movie really just confused me. If they ever did put the camera on me in this theater, I don't have a prayer of being in this commercial because I just looked confused most of the time.
I know, and I could also tell, like, when the guys had the cameras, like, they'd start to get ready. So I'm like, okay, so
Mhm.
this is when the scary thing's gonna come. So, like, they almost prompted us to know when it was coming.
Well, look, I mentioned to you, I kind of started feeling bad for the movie because we saw this with a pretty packed crowd. And with a horror movie, I feel like you can get a sense of the vibe in the room,
Yeah.
And I had a girl sitting next to me that I was just trying to get a feel for how she was reacting. And I don't think this movie was like going off like gangbusters like they probably hoped.
Yeah.
I feel like they probably, I mean, you only need a few seconds of footage for these commercials, so I'm sure they got more than enough. But yeah, don't. We should talk about though that the audience did applaud at the
Yes.
end of this movie, which I found hilarious. I looked at you, and it's interesting how people behave when they feel like they're expected to behave a certain way. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
I don't know. Maybe they were applauding the popcorn, which was delicious.
Well, there's very few movies where people have clapped, but I think the first one, then the one that just came to my mind is Toy Story 2. I was like 9, and I remember people applauding in the theater, and I was like, damn, like there's nobody here that they're doing this for except for the movie, and I was like, that's pretty cool. But you're right. This was like, okay, 20th Century Fox hired these people to be here and give us free shit, so like we should probably clap. But yeah.
Yeah, I've been to movies with some lively crowds. A lot of audiences have applauded, and a lot of audiences have booed at the end. And I feel like I've seen better movies get booed than this one.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, seriously. When I turned to you and they were clapping, you're like, I thought this was a piece of shit. You said it so funny. It was great. So, but at the end of the day, I think that if this movie came out in like 2003 or 2004, 2005, it would have made at least its budget back and then some, because it would have, if it was like a random Friday night, they weren't competing against a lot of other stuff. I think it would have got a lot of money the first 2 nights, a lot of dates, it would have worked. And I think there would have been straight to DVD sequels. I think it would have been like a whole thing if this came out 20 years ago. Right now, though, this is going to come and go so fast, no one's going to remember this movie.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. Can we just touch on the climax of this movie
Oh, yeah.
where, I mean, the boogeyman is this supernatural force, right? I mean, he's almost like this Freddy Krueger type character, and it seems like, the ending, they just decide to beat him with a hockey stick and set him on fire.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't seem like that's how you resolve this. I mean, like that does happen in Nightmare on Elm Street, but then at the end, Nancy has to, do something more thoughtful to truly defeat the evil. But that is how this movie kind of resolves, besides the really annoying ending in the shrink's office, where I thought we were at least going to get a jump scare at the end. I just thought, okay, they're going to give us one jump scare. The girl's approaching the closet door, and we're going to get one. And then she just closes the door, cut to black. And I was like, of course, of course, you're not even going to give me that.
Oh, and then you didn't even add the best part in. What was the
Oh,
song that they were
oh,
playing?
I was saving that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, 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 no. I was gonna get to it. So oddly enough, they smash cut to black and they play Elvis Presley's "Burning Love." Now I'm confused. First of all, I would imagine this is a somewhat low budget movie, and Elvis Presley songs are very expensive to license.
Yeah.
If it is Elvis, and I'm almost positive it was the Elvis version. Now, besides that, I just don't understand the choice.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on that?
Dude, they never mention Elvis in the movie. They never play this song in the movie.
Right. I was thinking like maybe the dead mom, like they could have established that her favorite singer was Elvis, but if that was in the movie, I blacked out.
Dude, okay, so like, you saw Barbarian, right?
Yes.
Okay, so like they call it like baby or whatever, or like, this creature, it thinks it's babies, whatever. So the ending song is this old like 60s doo-wop kind of like baby. It's
Hmm.
called Baby or whatever. And I was like, oh, it makes sense. This is a great song for this. It's not in the movie, they don't talk about it, but the word baby is so prevalent throughout the movie that this makes sense with the movie. This didn't fucking make sense. The only thing I can even tie it to, which I don't know if Elvis is a Warner Brothers movie, the one that just came out. I was like, maybe they were like doing weird ass cross marketing because Elvis is popular again, but no, it's a different studio.
The only thing that I could come up with, and I'm really doing the movie favors, is the creature burns at the end. So
Oh,
burning love,
oh
maybe?
my god.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's so many songs with burn in it though that I feel like they could, I don't know, burn baby burn. Just do that. Why not? Do a 70s fucking like disco song.
Yeah, I mean, they're not wrong to have a very upbeat song at the end because this movie is just very just dour
Yeah.
throughout. Just very dull all around, but even when the monster isn't lurking, we're just kind of in this depressing melodrama. So it was one of the kind of few moments of something upbeat, but it's while the credits were rolling.
So weird. So weird. Yeah, the ending too, though, just the way that this monster dies. First of all, gets shot with a shotgun multiple times at the house of the woman whose her husband commits suicide in their house. She shoots with a shotgun multiple times, doesn't kill it. She gets killed. Then they go back to the house, beat it, you're right, with like a broken hockey stick, and then lights it on fire with like what was it, like hairspray or something? It was like the end of Arachnophobia. It was like hairspray and a fucking lighter, and they lit it on fire, and that's how it died. Like, so it can survive shotguns. There's no yeah, you're right. Nightmare on Elm Street, they're like, okay, like you're not real. Like I just don't have to give you my energy, my fear. Like they explained it because they tried something, it didn't work. So they had to try something else. This movie, they're like, nah, it didn't die from the shotgun. I don't know, it just didn't die. Now it dies from the fire and the fucking perfume. That's what did it. Stupid.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the whole ending of this movie was reshoots or studio notes or something, because it doesn't even feel in the same piece as the rest of the movie, which is this very, very slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, at least something was happening, so I can't complain too much.
Wow, I'm sorry that it's such a downgrade from the original short story, and this is the 50th anniversary of that, so.
Oh wow. Yeah, well, if anyone's listening and they're curious about King and not sure where to start, the Night Shift collection is a great place to start because it's all these short stories you could just check in and put it down for a while and then check back in, and so many great stories, and the Boogeyman is a highlight. So if nothing else, that gets a recommend from me.
Yeah, really quick, I'll ask you this too. So how many short stories are in Night Shift?
Dozens.
Oh, okay, never mind.
And most of them have been made into movies, and actually really bad movies. And it's probably because, they're only these kernels of an idea, and then other people have to come in and fill up 90 minutes or 2 hours, and they just kind of stretch these stories out until they break.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, if you look through the stories, you might say, yeesh, this isn't some of King's best stuff, but it really is. They've just been made into bad movies.
Okay, hear me out then.
Mm-hmm.
What if, go back in time, it's 1980 or whatever, it's before they made so many of these into movies, whatever. Night Shift Part 1. They choose 3 of the short stories. They do kind of what they did in Creepshow or Twilight Zone movie or any of those, where they just do short segments, maybe like 30, 35 minutes each. And if those are successful, they did Night Shift Part 2, and they just do another 3 segments. And then there's the Night Shift series. What do you think of that?
I love that idea, but I will say there is something similar that exists.
Fuck me.
So in the 80s, I'm not sure exactly when it came out, in the mid 80s, I think, or maybe early 80s. There's a movie called Cat's Eye.
Oh, right.
Which is it's an anthology movie, 3 stories, and 2 of them are from Night Shift. So that's kind of the closest thing to what you're talking about. But no, yeah, I love that idea.
Okay, we got to do Cat Eyes. Because, yeah, I want to see that. I mean, we've talked about it a few times. I knew it was an anthology movie, but now that explaining that, I want to see, okay, is the problem that it got stretched out, or are the stories just not that good? I don't know. I'm kind of curious.
I mean, I think in some cases they're just done by like hack directors.
Mm.
You know, when you think about a lot of the King movies from the 70s and 80s, I mean, you had Kubrick and Toby Hooper and John Carpenter and Brian De Palma. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
the best of the best. And then, you know, when something's successful, people just try and squeeze money out of it, and you know, they don't get the best people involved, and you know, that's what happens. I think that might be what happened, you know, after it became such a huge hit. You know, all these different companies, some maybe that didn't have the best of intentions, started, you know, gobbling up all these King properties, and we got a lot of crap.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I've looked it up before. There's, I think, over 70 adaptations of his films. I mean, of his books into films or TV shows, which is just like,
Yeah,
it doesn't make
it's
sense.
insane.
It like literally doesn't make sense. But he's the man. He's amazing. Even if his movies, some of the movies aren't that great, it's still
Yeah.
awesome because it's him. Anyways, you got any last minute thoughts on the Boogeyman?
Could I just say one last thing?
Yeah.
I feel like the internet has really ruined investigating in movies, like investigations, because there's a scene where this girl, the lead, wants to communicate with her mother who has died,
Right.
and she just Googles it and she watches a YouTube video about it.
Yeah.
Like, if this was like a movie in the 70s or the 80s, she would have to get up, go to like a creepy bookstore,
Yeah.
and find a book on the occult, and you'd have a whole cool little scene. But today, she just Googles it.
Right, I know. Yeah, yeah. I remember that the influencer like video or whatever not the influencer, but like the explainer video.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's the thing. A lot of movies have to go back and take place in like those previous times, or they have to give a great reason why they can't use the internet or phones. But yeah, I know. So it's a challenging thing for screenwriters. They're gonna have to figure out how to get through that hurdle.
Mhm.
Well, everybody, thank you very much for listening into our discussion on The Boogeyman. This is being recorded again in April, so I don't know what's coming out this week on Wheel of Horror or when even this episode will come out, but sometime in June. Anyways, Joe, thank you very much for, inviting me to see this with you, for wanting to do the podcast, and for just being an all-around great guy.
Oh no, don't mention it. And the whole experience was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there were some real characters in the theater with us, some like huge horror fans, and like I said, we had our fill of popcorn, and it was a fun experience. And look, I was super critical of this movie. I certainly don't recommend it, but it wasn't like something miserable to sit through. You know, I'm sure, you know, if you're like 12 years old, you know, you might really get a kick out of this movie.
Right. It's short, and if it's like, like a sleepover movie in middle school, then yeah, maybe it wouldn't be that bad. Or like a first, like, you and your girlfriend on the couch, or boyfriend, or whatever the hell you're dating on the couch, and you're watching this movie, like, it could be, I don't know, you could get a little action watching this movie. It's a little scary. I don't know.
Totally. I mean, look, I probably have a few, you know, horror movies from childhood that I have a fondness for that most people would be like, you know, what the hell's this shit? You know? So yeah, I mean, this could end up being somebody's guilty pleasure for sure.
Yeah, and almost everything eventually becomes a cult classic, so who knows?
Oh yeah, yeah. 10 years from now, we're gonna record a podcast about you know, undiscovered or underappreciated gems that we got wrong in our original podcast.
Right, exactly. Now, yeah, exactly. Well, everybody, thank you very much, and we will see you all this Monday with something. But thank you. Go see the movie. Check it out. Bye-bye.